Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
My name is James.
And I know we've got quite a few new listeners, James, off the back of Correspondent week last week, which was incredible. So if you are new to Planet FPL, welcome to the show. For all you regular listeners, it's game time, James. T-minus 5 days.
And for all you regular listeners, Suj is a West Ham fan and normally depressed, and I'm a Tottenham fan and normally depressed.
James, save it for Tottenham tomorrow, because we are going to be having a discussion in Tottenham about why I feel like there is a more than 50% chance that West Ham United could end up relegated this season.
You swung your tune, mate. Your captain come out swinging, didn't he?
Quite rightly. It's a combination of the perfect storm is brewing at West Ham. Unhappy players, unhappy manager, shit fixtures, no new signings. Here we go again. But today's show's not all about that. How are we feeling about your draft at the moment? Where do you feel you are?
Oh, for my FPL team?
Yeah, we're getting into that T-minus 5 days, man. People want to know where you're at.
We're not going to talk about it because it might be part of tomorrow's People's Poll. But I'm about 95% there, I think.
You think so?
I genuinely, he's probably just waiting on Souček news now. And if he's unavailable, I know what I'm doing.
Ceballos?
No, I still keep Souček. He's probably just in case. I'm likely to go Chris Wood at the start. And then if Souček's going to be unavailable, it's going to be one too many for me. And I think I'll just go to Mitrovic instead. I
am really interested at the moment in how my squad structure has completely changed. So I've ended up with almost a big at the back in terms of Trent, Robbo, Doherty and Tierney and Ramsdale as a 5 at the back, who I think are all decent shouts and also good value shouts, like points per million. They're going to do well over the course of the season. Although I do want to look a little bit more into the stats defensively about whether or not there were more or less goals in the lockdown period. I feel like there were less goals during the lockdown period. And I feel like this season's going to start quite slow for a lot of teams. They've not had a massive break. They've not had a massive preseason. That allied with the lack of crowds, I think it could be quite a slow start. And then I've ended up with almost big at the front. Martial, Werner and...
Biffed it up, have you?
Yeah. Martial, Werner and Ings.
You baffed it up.
They're all 8.5, 9.5, which has left my midfield with Son, an 8 million slot, and Armstrong or Souček. But the reason I like where I'm at, I know I've got no premiums, no Salah, no Mane or what have you, is that I can downgrade to a 6 million striker or a 4.5 million defender or whatever and upgrade Son to Fernandes, whatever. I can find the money to go down in one place, up in another. And I'm going to hold tight for a couple of weeks and see which of the £6 million strikers is doing well or not, and which of the premiums is doing well or not, and what direction I want to take it in for a couple of weeks. So I've almost basically spread my money across the team with the view that eventually I'll downgrade somewhere and upgrade somewhere else to go back into the premiums. The likelihood is, I could miss a haul in the first couple of weeks, but also I don't feel like I'll have a disastrous blank. I don't feel like there's a 20 or 30 point week in my team, but I could maybe miss out on a 70 or 80 point week. But for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I think that's okay, just to stay with the pack.
I feel like you didn't know how long this podcast was going to take us in the first instance.
Let's talk about these predictions. So people who haven't listened to this pod before, this specific episode, we ask all 20 correspondents to predict various things.
All 26.
26. Sorry,
we've got 20, obviously the 20 Premier League correspondents plus the non-retired, because 2 of them are coming on this week's Clash of the Correspondents this week. FPL Terry, our Huddersfield correspondent, FPL Badger, our Norwich correspondent, 6th goal Watford, Neil Grove, AFC BNG, our Bournemouth correspondent. We've invited predictions from them. Also FPL Canal, our Stato, and FPL Captain, our graphics hero of some of the streams. So there are 26 in all obviously very engaged FPL players. So I think it does give us an indication of, sometimes when you're looking at the ownership at the moment, some of them are you think, well, that's not right. Like De Bruyne still, you think, well, it's got to keep going down the closer we get to game week 1.
Sure.
A lot of the guys are obviously engaged in terms of what they're doing, etc. So, and neutral last year, I had to remove the correspondent predictions of their own team because some were predicting their teams, let's say, enthusiastically high or depressingly low. This year's not been the case with that. I've just left their predictions in for their own clubs because it's all pretty fair, other than a couple of people we're going to fucking grass up during it. But yeah, we've asked them some various questions, essentially whether they think each club will finish, the top FPL point scorer for that club, and the player from that club they would be most likely to have in their squad if they could only have one for game week 1. We've asked them a series of other questions as well, like Golden Boot winner, top FPL scorer, best 4.5 million midfielder. And we're going to go through all of that for you now.
Fantastic. I've not seen any of the answers or any of the tables or what have you yet. So this is all coming blind to me, which I'm looking forward to seeing and seeing who I agree with, who I disagree with. And if it will in any way influence my team. Where do you want to start, James? With the league table?
We will start and we'll kind of cover bits of teams off as we do this. But yes, we're going to go through the league table predicted by the guys. These don't include my predictions or your predictions, Suj. It's just the 26 guys. We'll start with Suj. Who do you think they are predicted to win the Premier League?
Liverpool.
22 of the 26 correspondents have predicted Manchester City to win the league.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my reaction as well.
Wow. 22 out of 26.
Yep. Have gone for City first. Now, it's worth saying, and this is worth remembering during this, that all of these predictions have been returned to me from the guys between Tuesday last week and Friday. Now, obviously, we now know that Lionel Messi is definitely not going to Manchester City. So it's possible that this has been a little bit of a factor in people's thinking at the time that Messi's possibly on his way.
I would have said that it was a little bit optimistic to think that he was on his way. I mean, we spoke about it. It was a lot needed to happen for that transfer to work out. So, okay, 22 out of 26 thought that City are going to win the league.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I suspect it's not that many. Like I said, I spoke to Dan, or we obviously spoke to Dan. Was it last Tuesday? I think we recorded with Dan, FPL Loco Lord from Liverpool, yep. And we said that we thought it would still be them, probably just about. I've still got question marks on what City are doing defensively for me. We asked the guys, obviously, who they thought would be the top FPL point scorer from each team. 19 of them said De Bruyne, 7 of them for Sterling. This should come as no surprise. Our correspondent at FPL Pringle has gone for De Bruyne. He also said that De Bruyne would be the most likely player that he would start with. I think in terms of starting with one, Phil Foden feels just about, or Laporte maybe, feel like just about the only two that I think it would be reasonable to start with if that was part of your thinking. I just think having that De Bruyne money there just feels too much for me. Plus,
yeah,
you don't
I was going to say start in inverted commas, meaning game week when their season starts. That's who he starts with, not game week 1.
Most people will live without City for the Wolves game in game week 2 and attack Manchester United. That's how I think most people are going to go. I think the leaving, and it's obviously part of the conversation anyway. I think the leaving of the money on the bench with, say, Fernandes and De Bruyne ready to go just feels like too much for me. I'd just take a fucking hit to get these players in would be my take on it. Particularly as well when, I mean, City's game is like the Monday week, the week after. There's so much information that can be learnt between now and then. So I'm not keen on having City guys in from the start. I think if it's Foden at his value, I think Laporte at his value, as long as you're covered, I think it's okay. Otherwise, I think most people are going to be skipping City from the start.
I'm with you on that. I saw an interesting stat where if Foden gets 50% of the minutes this season and carries on his points per minute rate or whatever, he would score more points than if Grealish played the whole season, which was fascinating. Like Phil Foden, for me, could really emerge as, do you know what, if you want to spread your money elsewhere and if he's getting regular minutes, the one that allows you to cover off and not need to go with the big hitter of De Bruyne or Sterling and let you get a Salah or Mane or what have you. It is very interesting.
He
I've got
won't play all
Martial.
them minutes though, will he? That's the point.
That's the frustration, isn't it? Martial, for me, is the most expensive player that I'm going to leave on the bench in game week 1. He says, and then actually in my current draft, I've got 1.5 million in the bank. So it's no difference having Fernandes on the bench anyway. But I can understand that. I've got a sneaky on Sterling, I do think Sterling might have a really good season, 20-goal season this year. So I don't think there'll be more than 15, 20 points between De Bruyne and Sterling come the end of the season. Very hard to call.
It'll probably be close. 5 of the guys have said they are intending to start with City. To clarify what I asked them if you could only have one player from that squad / had to have one player for game week 1, who would it be? Foden came out second to De Bruyne on that. 5 of the guys said they're considering starting with Foden. Foden also had 6 votes, which was the most for best midfielder priced under 7 million.
Mm-hmm.
And De Bruyne had 10 votes of the 26 to be the top scoring FPL player again.
Wow.
We'll cover who else got those votes in a bit more detail towards the end. Liverpool, only 4 of them think they'll win the title. One of them even went for third, although City had 1 vote to finish third as well. Who do you think was voted as their top FPL point scorer?
Salah.
Yes, was Salah. 16 of the votes, although it must be said that this time last year when we did this, he had every single one of them. Split of 5 votes each for Alexander-Arnold and Mane. Dan, FPL Loco Lord, has gone for Trent, our Liverpool correspondent, to
top
be
point scorer.
Yeah,
for the season.
He's gone for Trent. Interestingly, obviously, when you break down in terms of which player would be the priority, and bearing in mind, Liverpool obviously have a great game week 1 fixture on paper against Leeds. 21 of the guys said they would prioritise Trent if they could only have one, which is interesting. And I just wonder if it makes me think that the closer we get to game week 1, whether this captaincy is really going to swing towards Aubameyang against Fulham rather than Liverpool against Leeds. I think that's something that could happen. Plus, I mean, I sent a tweet out on Saturday saying, best advice I can give you this weekend, basically, is don't pay any attention to these club friendlies. So I had quite a lot of people jumping on about Liverpool losing to Blackpool and Salah and Mane not playing well. Anyway, an hour later, Liverpool had won 7-2.
Yeah.
Although Salah and Mane had both gone off, I think when it was 3-2, and yeah, they didn't look great in the Community Shield either. Motivation is the only concern I've got with Liverpool, and I think when we start at the weekend, the motivation will be there, I believe, because I really think they're desperate come May next year, touch wood, that they're lifting that league again and in front of people. I think that's the biggest motivation of all, that it doesn't feel quite 100% complete because they didn't share that moment. It's no good them having a victory parade next January with the Premier League title, because now we can socially distance safely. And they're like 12 points behind Man City in the league. It's not going to work.
It won't feel the same for sure.
Of course it ain't.
Who was third? Chelsea.
Chelsea third.
No surprise there.
Every correspondent thinks he'll finish in the top 4. 2 of the guys thought second. 13 went for Pulisic and Werner joint for top point scorer. 19 of them would obviously prioritise going for Werner in game week 1. Obviously, we think, and we're pretty sure, that Pulisic will be unavailable for game week 1.
Yep.
Though 10 of the 26 guys think Pulisic is likely to be the highest scoring midfielder between 7 and 9 million this season. Again, worth saying, these predictions obviously came back before the signing of Havertz confirmed. So, if anything, these predictions for Chelsea would only be a little bit better than what they were, I think. Although I'm pretty sure all the guys knew that this deal was going to happen. Everybody seems to know. So, yeah, I mean, there's people now, obviously, with that signing confirmed, they're asking questions of if they can push for the title. I repeat what I've said several times over. If they buy a goalkeeper quickly who's of serious quality, they could challenge for this title. But as it stands, I think they'd be more likely to drop out the top 4.
I think they could challenge for the title without a serious goalkeeper this year, which will be interesting to see. It depends on how ruthless and relentless Liverpool and City are, but I don't think either are going to be able to maintain that consistency that they've had for the last 2 seasons, that 98, 99 points type numbers, even 100 points, I don't think it's going to be what's going to win the league this year. I think it'll be low 90s or high 80s. Be interesting to see. It's all about consistency now. So let's see what happens with that. For me, Werner, without a doubt, is going to end up top point scorer, and he's one of 3 players. I'm finding it very hard to call the Golden Boot this year, but he's one of 3 players that I think could be Golden Boot this year.
Interesting. The problem with the keeper situation is, for me, there's only one team in this league that could get away with having a bad goalkeeper, and that's City, because of the domination they can have on a game. They can go, we're going to shut this down. We're going to play a little bit deeper, and we're just going to keep the ball for fun. And they're capable of that. I don't think any of the other clubs are. They include Liverpool in that, actually. I think one of Chelsea's great strengths is counter-attacking. So they cede possession quite a lot. People shoot from range. The goalkeeper's in trouble. I'm not joking. He's in trouble. Yeah. After shots that get the target from outside the box against Chelsea basically end up in the net.
You know, another interesting fact that I heard, it makes it sound like I've just been listening to pods and reading stuff on Twitter, was to do with expected goals conceded.
Okay.
Chelsea were there or thereabouts with some very good defensive sides. Yeah. They conceded like 15 more goals than their XGC.
Yeah,
which makes
Ted mentioned all this at rotation FPL in his
article. They don't give away a lot of chances, but then something fucks up where the ball ends up in the back of the net, which then made me think, either defensive errors or the keeper errors, right? So that XGC thing is very interesting, that they conceded way more goals. So either that rights itself and they get back to where their XGC should be, which means that defensively they are more stable, or well and truly the keeper is that bad and they will continue to concede more goals than they should. Time will tell in the next few weeks. We'll soon find out.
Do you have a note on Harvitz? He's coming at 8.5 minutes. Good price, by the way. He could go mental at that. So. Yep. He's unlikely, in my opinion, to start game week 1.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't think it's
too tight a turnaround now.
And with Liverpool in game week 2, I really don't think it's worth the chance of starting with. I think that, if you're going into them, go with Werner, I think, which looks like the closer we get to the deadline, his ownership is creeping up and up and up. He might get close to Trent for ownership come game week 1. He's another one, obviously, you can put the armband on game week 1. And it might be because of the ownership that actually overall he kind of comes in the conversation with Aubameyang and Salah, basically. Yep. 4th in the predictions was obviously Manchester United. Yep. Only one of the 26 correspondents doesn't think they'll finish in the top 4. One predicted 5th. There was one prediction to finish 2nd as well. Gary is my cap plan, thinks they'll finish 4th. He discussed on the first correspondent week pod with us that he thinks at the moment Chelsea is stronger. Who do you think got voted as top FPL point scorer from these guys?
It's Bruno or Martial. I'm going to go with Bruno, being that Bruno's in the midfielder.
16 went for Bruno, interestingly. And it feels like there's a lot of noise for the other 2 at the moment. 5 went for Rashford, 4 for Martial.
Only 4 for Martial.
Only 4. But interestingly, when I asked the guys, if you had to pick one for game week 1, it was split between Fernandes and Martial, 10 votes each. Gary is my cap plan, and he obviously submitted this before Rashford pulled out the England squad. He reckons Rashford for top scorer, top point scorer from United, and he reckons that's the guy that he'd put his trust in for game week 1. But I suspect Rashford is becoming more and more difficult now to pick when you don't know his injury status, and you probably are not before game week 1 starts. I just think you have to go without him. And again, in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary to leave the Martial and Fernandes money there. I just think smash them out. 1 game week punt, you can pick any player for game week 1 to try and get you the returns to make that hit worthwhile. I think in that circumstance, that's an occasion where we should be taking hits to get the guys in if that's what we think is best.
Martial is number 2 on the list of the 3 players that I think could end up with the Golden Boot this year.
Okay.
Werner, Martial, and Harry Kane are the 3 that I think could end up with the Golden Boot this year. So many factors, fitness, etc., etc. Aguero suddenly playing 3,400 minutes might smash that out of the water. But those are the 3 that I'm finding it very hard to split for the Golden Boot. Somewhere between 23, 24, 25 goals, all 3 of them could get this season.
The guy that's been voted by the correspondents of who should win the Golden Boot, his team have been voted to finish 5th in the league. Leaves you two choices. No, the guys have gone for Arsenal, mate. They've gone
with me then.
They've gone into this range that I've said where basically Arsenal have had one prediction only to finish in the top four. Everybody else has predicted them to finish fifth or sixth, including our correspondent at 3-5, who he thinks fifth.
Yeah.
There were 9 votes for Aubameyang to win the Golden Boot, which was the most. Everybody would prefer. Everybody obviously thinks Aubameyang will finish as Arsenal's top FPL point scorer. No shot there. Although 2 of the 26 said that if they had to buy one Arsenal player in game week 1, they were looking at Willian more than Aubameyang. But it's still very clear, isn't it? He's obviously going to be the talisman. He's potentially got an extra 2 points every week for doing nothing different to what he did last week. It's very clear, isn't it, that he's the one who I would think at the weekend I would fear, I think, more than any other player. So, I mean, he's in for me, and he'll almost definitely be my captain as well.
He's not in for me. I'm very unlikely to get him, but I may consider Willian. I have an 8 million slot in my midfield, 8 to 8.5. And there are a number of players that I can put in there. Dele Alli, Willian, and then further down the line, any of the Chelsea guys, Ziyech, Pulisic, Havertz, and Riyad Mahrez all fit nicely into that slot. Game week 1, I may take a punt on Dele Alli. If Heung-min Son's not my other, if he's not my other midfielder, then I'll go with Dele Alli and I'll see if I can upgrade Son somewhere else. But if I do go with Heung-min Son, then I'm going to end up with Willian potentially. So interesting there. Everyone predicted Spurs 6th, or is there a mixture?
There's a lot of correspondents now who obviously are having their position reviewed following this, but I don't disagree with them. So yeah, Tottenham in 6th. Mm-hmm. Nobody thinks that Tottenham will finish in the top 4, which pleases me, because you remember this time last year, mate, where all but one of them predicted Tottenham to finish 3rd, and I said, I don't like this. I don't feel good about Spurs at the moment. So I'm hoping it swings the other way and they're all wrong again. There were 2 votes for Tottenham actually to miss out on the top 6, but otherwise it was generally locked in 5th or 6th. 20 of the 26 correspondents voted Kane to be the top Tottenham FPL point scorer. There were 5 votes for Son. More interestingly, I think, for who would be the game week 1 priority, 11 went for Kane, 9 went for Son, 3 went for Dyer, and 2 went for Doherty.
Okay. Doherty's a lock for me. I'll tell you, I feel like he's a lock for me. There's so many options of places we can go from Doherty, and him in that Aurier role, bombing forward with better targets to aim for in the likes of Harry Kane to finish off the crosses. Doherty's a lock for me.
I don't think Doherty's a great crosser, you know. I think it's worth saying. It's worth saying. Nearly all the Wolves' returns come from actually getting inside the penalty box. I do think he'll have plenty of opportunity to do that. We also should not assume that he plays this advanced right-back role. I've said plenty of times, I think there'll be games where he plays it and there'll be games where he plays as more of a traditional right-back.
And then the clean sheet points might be a potential there. So I think defensively,
but then you always had that with Wolves anyway, right? So
yeah, they were fairly decent in terms of clean sheets. Not bad at all. Down to 7th.
Who do you reckon they went for?
Leicester City. No. Yeah, Leicester City.
Wolves.
Okay.
That'll obviously please Bradley Parker Bradley, who obviously his team finished just behind Ricky Saunders' Tottenham last season at the death. They never should have finished behind us. There was only 1 prediction for Wolves to finish inside the top 6. There were 2 in the bottom half, which were both predicted to finish 11th. Bradley thinks they'll probably finish 8th. 25 of the respondees went for Jimenez as top FPL point scorer for Wolves.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout and a given.
There was
a split. One lone random non-Jimenez vote.
To be honest, I didn't even list the people where there was only 1 vote. I think if it's just one, if it's 1 vote, then it's not worth mentioning.
Been a random Traore or something along those lines.
There is a split though in terms of the thinking for game week 1. However, we think this will change. So 12 of the guys said their priority would be Vinagre. 11 said Jimenez if they had to start with 1 for game week 1. Now, there were reports emerging late on Sunday night that suggest that Vinagre might be heading to Porto.
I saw that.
which completely changes the game. And for me now, that's enough to say, hang on a minute. And the larger conversation here in terms of, there's a lot of conversation about 4.5 million defenders at the moment. I think, for example, Taylor, Ayling, not so much Ayling, I take that out. Taylor and Walker-Peters are two good examples of players that you think, okay, that's safe. And the reason I think they're safe is Burnley are not going to buy a left back. They've got to. And Walker-Peters has just been bought by Southampton. So these guys, for me, feel safe. Whereas even Ayling at Leeds, it's not beyond reason that suddenly we hear Leeds have bought someone to replace him during this transfer window that goes on to October the 5th, right? Mm-hmm. And Vinagre feels exactly like that at the moment. They're getting this left-sided centre-half in who can cover on the left flank.
Marcel?
From Lyon, that's your guy. Thank you very much, Suj.
Yeah, my pronunciation might be off. It might be Markel, but I think it's Marcel.
Bradley's initial thoughts were that he was probably coming in as cover, or he would step in for Saiss as left-sided centre-half.
Yeah, he's now, I mean, age doesn't matter, but he is 31.
Yeah.
But they're paying like 2 million euros or 3 million euros. So as cover, it's perfect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But these Vinagre rumours that went around last night seem like they're quite strong. Mm. If he's at the club, I think he'll start game week 1.
Yeah, so does Bradley.
And I think it would be, he completely agrees. I think it would be his shirt to lose. But there are now, just feel like there are too many questions around it, I think. And I'd have liked to have had him in because I'd have been confident that, he will start and, he could lose a shirt, but he'll probably get it from the start. Now these rumours, I mean, it's one really to follow over the next couple of days to see what happens, I think.
Yeah.
I'll be going without, I think, now.
Thoughts on they've dropped 40 million euros or pounds or euros, whatever it is, on the new 19-year-old Wunderkind out of Portugal as well. 40 million euros is no small amount of money. So they've obviously seen that he's a very, very talented kind of player. Do you think it's now a 2 up front? Like, do you think it's reasonable to drop 40 million on a striker and then ease him in?
I think the lad will be integrated. Everton dropped quite a large amount of money on Moise Kean this time last year, right?
Correct.
It's not necessarily easy to adapt. Nuno tends to... Bradley said that Nuno tends to like get his players in understanding the style, the system, the tactics. Wolves are very heavy on how they are tactically without the ball and stuff, right? So I would not see him going straight in that team. Wolves, we know, can fluctuate between the 3-5-2 and the 3-4-3. It kind of verges on a 5-2-3, really. And it's only me, hold this belief, trying to still find explanations for the Doherty transfer. I'm questioning whether they're about to do something completely different. But the Wolves guys on our Patreon are saying, don't expect it. Expect similar tactics to last season and stuff. They need to be watched, I think. I think most people are going to start without a Wolves player, I think.
I'm starting without one.
Feels a bit mad.
I'm starting without one, but I don't see myself being without one for the entire season, if that makes any sense. Next down to 8th, Leicester City.
Yeah, Leicester in this one. Every single correspondent thinks that they will still finish top half despite the, let's say, very, very flat 2020 for them. 23, think Vardy will be Leicester's top FPL point scorer. No surprise. There were 2 votes for Maddison. Although, as we spoke with Aaron Lager, our Leicester correspondent last week, if it's Barnes versus Maddison, he would prefer Barnes. And interestingly, for those looking at having one for game week 1, 14 said Vardy, 6 said Barnes, 4 said Justin. Justin, we think, is a short-term move, and you need to understand what's happening with the new signing Castano there.
Yeah.
And keep an eye on if they're looking to add someone else. Justin, for me, is only a transfer for people who really think they're going to be wildcarding in the first few game weeks. If so, I think it's probably fine. Harvey Barnes is someone who I've flirted with the idea for game week 1 only, as the closer it gets, as the player that I would then remove for Fernandes, for example, if I leave a certain amount of money in the bank. I don't think I'm going to go down that route, but he would be the one that I would start with, I think. Jamie Vardy's a great shout. Gemarino said to us that he'll score. He always scores against West Brom game week 1. He's a reliable one to start with. But I think, again, most people, when I look at drafts, all I see is Leicester defensive. It's all I ever see. To be honest, if I see a Leicester player, and it's normally Justin.
Yeah,
when I look through Twitter.
For me, Barnes is a very interesting one. There is talk about potentially a change of system there with Castagna coming in, maybe 3 at the back, and then really allowing Pereira and what have you to bomb forward. Once Pereira's fit, he'll be on a lot of people's radars, but we don't know when that's likely to happen yet. Who made it to 9th in the table, James?
9th, sir.
Southampton.
Everton. 20 of the guys still think Everton top half. Only 6 went for bottom half. Sean at Spirit Blues has gone for 9th, which I think is a reasonable prediction. All of the predictions were between 7th and 12th. 23 of the respondents think Richarlison as top FPL point scorer, which I think is higher than I would have expected. There were 2 for Dean, 1 for Calvert-Lewin in the votes. I think that distance between Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin to be their talisman, I found was surprising how big and how many people thought still Richarlison. 10 said Richarlison would be the preference if they would start with 1 in game week 1. 6 said Calvert-Lewin. 3, Luca Dean. 3 said James Rodriguez, who, to my knowledge, is still unconfirmed at the moment, unless I've missed something.
Is Doucouré confirmed as well? Because I haven't seen him.
No, the only one that's been confirmed, to my knowledge, is Alan, who's coming from Napoli. He's a very good player. And 2 went for Anthony Gordon, who's obviously a youngster you've seen playing midfield and left midfield during the restart period. I suggest that dream's kind of died for him now with them really looking at reinforcements. Yeah. So Gordon would not be the 4.5 million advice until you saw that he was playing regularly, and then you can reassess it. 10 of the guys, despite thinking Richarlison as the best FPL returnee from Everton, 10 of the guys voted for Calvert-Lewin to be the highest scoring forward at under £8 million. Now, people might naturally be drawn to that because bar Abraham, he's the highest price. Calvert-Lewin is worth saying he's a little bit more than your Woods, your Morpays and all the like. But yeah, Calvert-Lewin was the one who picked up the most votes there.
I don't see it. More than any other team, including Wolves that we've just mentioned, Everton are the most watch and wait type team for me. Everton feel like a side, much in the same way of a Newcastle or even a West Ham, that despite getting better players on the pitch or that will flatter to deceive and we'll shoot ourselves in the foot. And I feel like Everton could still do that as well. It's all well and good getting the right players, but getting the right winning mentality and culture through the team and the squad is going to be Ancelotti's challenge more than anything else. And they're a real watch and wait for me at the moment, Everton. 10th.
Yeah,
Sheffield
not
United.
on my radar in terms of game week 1 selections, Everton. But if they get those players through the door, then yeah, I would expect them to get back into the top half. 10th was Southampton, Suj.
Oh, was it? So Sheffield United are not in the top half of the table from...
Yeah, he's going to fucking explode, any old time. 21 of the guys have voted Southampton's finished in the top half. All of them predicting between 8th and 14th as a finish for Southampton overall, except for our correspondent. We're going to grass you up, Ali, FPL Gaffer, who's gone for 7th. Yeah. But listen, I think it's possible, by the way. I don't blame him for being optimistic.
I think they'll finish above Everton, to be honest with you. And basically because you look at the team, like McCarthy's a decent shot stopper and he's an okay goalkeeper. So many people are considering for FPL. I don't think he's bad. He's never going to set the world alight, but he's a steady Eddie in goal for them. They've bought a couple of reinforcements in defence in turning Walker-Peters into a permanent deal and Salisu. They've got Romeu in holding midfield. He's not bad. Then you've got good attacking options in Adams, Ings, Redmond, Armstrong. I think that front 4 has got goals in it. What we saw after the restart was very good. I just think Southampton are a team going places. And so for me, 9th is more than doable for them. Yeah. Top point scorer of those is, if it's not 26 people thinking Danny Ings, then I don't know what's going on there.
25. There was one vote for Che Adams. 15 said they would most likely start with Danny Ings as their priority for game week 1. 4 said Armstrong. 3, Alex McCarthy. 2, Cole Walker-Peters, who is also the guy that FPL Gaffer said that he would favour as his priority. He's Cole Walker-Peters if he could only pick one. And he suggested to us he was probably going to go McCarthy, Walker-Peters and Armstrong, didn't he? So that's quite interesting. I think we're all expecting good thing from Saints, and right now as it stands, I've got 3 of them.
Yep.
11th, Suj. Who do you think finished down?
Sheffield United.
Burnley.
Wow. Okay.
Interesting one here because only 5 think that Burnley will finish in the top half. 4 think bottom 6, but level out quite nicely because no one thinks they'll get relegated. Jack at Turfy Topper thinks they'll finish 12th. So this is actually slightly higher than his thoughts. Interestingly, top point scorer from Burnley, 18 still went for Pope. 8 went for Wood. But this is a highlight the difference between who do you think is going to be a top scorer and which 15 of them most, one is a really obvious one in my opinion to get him in and leave him on the bench from the start. 6 have gone for Nick Pope. 4 he haven't leave on the bench. He thinks Wood will outscore Pope. 9 of the correspondents have gone for Nick Pope to be the highest overall scoring goalkeeper. And 13 of the correspondents have gone for Charlie Taylor to be the highest scoring £4.5 million defender. I'm going to waffle to myself at the moment because Suj just disappeared.
I just plugged in. I just plugged in a cable to make my internet better.
Now you're going to ask a load of questions, which I just covered, aren't you?
No. I heard everything you said. I think the Burnley Sheffield United are 2 very closely matched teams, and also teams that set up like with a very stable, solid defense. And I can see why people have picked Burnley to go up above Sheffield United, because I think the Burnley team have more goals in them. You look at the strikers that Sheffield United have, and I don't see any of them being more than 10, 12 goals a season, whereas a Chris Wood could easily get up to 16, 17 goals should he stay fit, 18 goals. In terms of creative midfield attacking threat, McNeil, Westwood off the set pieces, they've got that threat there. So, yeah, I don't disagree with it. For me, the priority would be Chris Wood. I don't think Pope offers the best value at 5.5. I think Ramsdale at 5 or Leno at 5 or any of the 4.5s is better value. But Pope will probably be their highest point scorer, I think, and Chris Wood will be close behind. Chris Wood, his returns and his viability is purely dependent on him staying fit. If you even gave me 75 or 80% of the fixtures, if you said to me now he'll stay fit 75 to 80%, it'd be good enough to be a set and forget for me at that point. So let's hope he can stay fit, because he will become a good asset.
Essentially, as I said at the top, whether he's in my squad at the moment, whether he stays in it or not is basically dependent on Souček now.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to. I really want him from the off as a really good differential early doors. It's obviously Leicester away in game week 2. So I know with the priorities of United, City, Wood is not going to be a transfer that's on people's minds. He can return in any of these games. He's going to be he's not going to get many braces and hat-tricks and stuff. I'm never going to be sticking the armband on him, but just to sit there and keep churning. Yeah, I think I favour him as probably the best long-term 6.5 million option. Actually, I'd probably slightly favour it over Antonio, but very close between the two. I've got Antonio in at the moment as well. 12th, Suj, was FPL Blade, Sheffield United.
Okay.
Only 2 of the correspondents think they'll finish in the top half. 4 think in the bottom 6. So most people think fairly safe in mid-table. The range of predictions for Sheffield United was between 9th and 17th.
Wow.
Except for Tomo himself, who will grass you up, who thinks the Blades will finish 8th. He's never one who's short of confidence.
No.
9 of the guys, Suj, voted for who to be the Sheffield United top FPL point scorer?
Ramsdale.
Ender Stevens, interestingly.
Okay.
7 went for Ramsdale. 6 went for Egan.
Yeah, I was going to say Egan must be in there as well.
3 went for Baldock. It's interesting that you got 9 for Stevens there, 3 for Baldock. And I don't know if there's something
we spoke about it last week, right? You felt
I don't want anybody to ask me to pick between them. It's like nearly impossible.
Exactly. And when we did the differential team, which we did on the Patreon pod last week, we were torn between Stevens and Baldock. There's a cigarette paper between them. So interesting. Yeah, I don't see why not Ender Stevens could come back and be the player that breaks through this season. Will be interesting to see.
12 of the guys said Ramsdale would be their priority for game week 1, 7 for Egan, and then only 3 for Stevens. So
it's that price,
it's
basically, isn't it? 5.5 million.
The assessment
basically.
that I don't want to pay the 5.5 million, but I think he could be the highest scorer. Tomo, interestingly, as the one that he's targeting for game week 1, and I'm pretty sure he will do this, possibly part influenced by the Souček illness, is Sander Berge.
Okay.
Who he's strongly looking like he's going to start with. I also think he's somewhat desperate to have some sort of Sheffield United attacking asset in his squad in game week 1. But he does offer a decent 5 million alternative, genuinely. And I think if Souček is definitely ruled out, then you'll see a lot of people make that transfer. Although I think the majority you have Souček will come down to a 4.5 million midfielder, I think.
Yeah, probably makes sense. I think the introduction of Dani Ceballos into the game at 5 million was another one that will be attractive to people. There's not a lot there. And a player from a top 6 team who post-lockdown, post-injury was getting regular minutes, albeit in a deeper
Wasn't getting regular returns though, mate.
No, he wasn't, but he's playing side by side with Xhaka, right? And so he was in a deeper role, but he's a very skillful player. You could see him putting through a through ball here or there. And he's 5 million quid. Right?
He's fine at 5 million quid.
Right. So Dani Ceballos for 5 million quid.
I also think a lot of people will feel burnt following having watched him play against Burnley in game week 2 last season and dived in. I think the look on your face suggests that you were one of them.
Well, I had him from game week 1, to be honest with you.
Did you? Game?
Yeah. And I did get those returns against Burnley, but then after that, nothing. Although one of those returns, if you remember, was the incredible assist for Aubameyang, which was just not an assist at all, because I think he just made
a block tackle, wasn't it?
And then it went through to Aubameyang. So interesting. We're down to unlucky number 13 now in the table, James.
Yes, and now we're in the range where these remaining 7 teams have all had at least one prediction to be relegated.
Leeds United.
West Ham United. However,
delusional correspondents that we have.
The majority of these votes obviously came back before the Diangana news was confirmed.
Sure.
And your captain ripped the club, and then a few other players ripped the club on social media afterwards. Everybody thinks you'll finish bottom half. 5 thinking bottom 6, and a further 1 individual thinks that you will be relegated. The range of your finishes.
Nice one, Chris.
The range of your finishes is between 11th and 19th. Chris, FI_FPO Addict 123 thinks you'll finish 13th, is what he's predicted, which is exactly the same as where this has leveled out. 14 went for Antonio to be your most likely top FPL point scorer. I suspected that would have been higher, actually. 4 have gone for Fabianski, which suggests a bad season.
Fabianski.
3 each have gone for Jared Bowen and Seb Haller. Do you think there's a chance he starts?
Haller.
Yeah. With Antonio right up front.
Yeah, 2 up top. I can see that. I can definitely see that.
I don't think he'll start that way, actually. I think if you had a better run of fixtures, he might change it up. But I think the fact that you've got Arsenal straight afterwards and then a very daunting run of fixtures suggests to me that you'd probably rather start in more of a 4-2-3-1, generally speaking. 12 of the guys said Souček would be their priority for game week 1. 10 Antonio.
No
2 for Ben Johnson, who I understand had a bit of a nightmare at the weekend.
Subbed off after 26 minutes.
Wow. What's that all about?
Had a bad game. He was at fault for 2 of the goals.
We guessed.
We did. Well, I mean, losing 5-2 at Bournemouth doesn't really matter, though, does it?
You see
Bournemouth,
Bournemouth,
at home to Bournemouth, because you said it yourself, James, on Twitter. Don't read anything into these friendlies; they don't mean nothing.
No, I quite agree. But the fact that he was withdrawn after 26 minutes is slightly concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, Ben Johnson is no longer in my squad. Tyrick Mitchell has taken that 4 million slot based on the Clash of the not the Clash of the Correspondents week show with Mig, and I'm other than Souček, purely dependent on price, I can't see myself having any other West Ham players for the foreseeable future.
I want Antonio as my forward game week 1 punt as the holder for Martial. Is basically where I'm at the moment. I'm pretty sure I will start with Antonio, and I'm likely to start with Souček whether he's fit or not. I think. But yeah, Johnson now is a complete no-go for me, in my opinion. Too much doubt there when I'm probably going to need it to play in game week 1 in terms of my intended starting lineup. We'll come back on to 4 million defenders near the end.
I'll just put it out there. I think 13th is way too high for where we'll finish. I think 16th, 17th, or 18th.
Jesus, mate. Have you been that influenced by what's happened at the weekend?
I'm concerned about our transfer activity. Like, look, to then go straight away and put in a bid for James Tarkowski, I thought, great, because we need a central defender.
James Tarkowski would be a bloody good signing. I know it's not what people think. Oh, it's the imagination or whatever.
Very good signing.
But that would be a good signing.
25 million or whatever we bid. He doesn't want to come to West Ham. Rejected the move. Leicester have come in with 30 million and they're probably going to buy him. That says a lot. The fact that he didn't want to come to us. So yeah, it's about the culture then of the club and wanting to sign for a certain team and not being able to sign James Tarkowski for that kind of level of money is concerning. So
Antonio, Allaire, Anderson, Bowen, Yarmolenko, Souček. Are you short? Are you Lanzini? If you could ever rediscover his form, you're not short of good attacking players, are you?
No, scoring goals has never been a problem. Not been a big problem. Let's say we have been able to score goals. It's the other end that's always been a problem. Let's see. Who was 14th, James?
I think Cameron Carter-Vickers is probably available on a year's loan if you want to have it. 14th was Leeds, FPL Tacticians Leeds. Yeah. 4 of the correspondents, unlike with your club, 4 of the correspondents think Leeds will finish top half. There were 10 predictions between 11th and 14th, 10 for the bottom 6. Only 2 think that Leeds will be relegated. Andy Martin went for 12th in his prediction. The range here is from 9th to 19th, and it's a big range, and it doesn't surprise me because I think Leeds probably can finish anywhere between about 9th and 19th, actually. 11 of the correspondents think Rodrigo, who's obviously in as the new forward, will be the highest scoring Leeds FPL point scorer. 4 went for Ayling, 3 went for Click, 2 went for Meslier and Hernandez. Andy thinks Click, actually, is the one that could break out and be the top point scorer. Priority for game week 1. This is where Dallas comes back into the conversation. 8 for Ayling, 5 for Dallas, 5 for Meslier, 2 for Click. Ayling is probably the one for me I've decided on, but it's more of a long-term thinking, what we discussed with Andy last week.
Do you think he's a game week 1 for you?
Ayling? Yeah. He's creeping in for me because I'm just thinking longer term with my strategy. Ayling is probably more for people like me who are intent on not wildcarding early. If you are thinking of wildcarding early and want one or a plan in short term, go for Dallas. That's what we came to as a conclusion now.
Correct. 15th.
15th, go Suj.
Newcastle United.
Brighton and Hove Albion. 2 of the correspondents think they're in for a top half. 6 think bottom 6, and a further 4 think relegation is likely for the Seagulls. Range of finishing positions 10 to 19th. Sam at FPL Seagulls gone for 12th. Only 10 think Maupay is likely to be the top Brighton FPL point scorer. It was 7 votes for Ryan, 6 for Trossard. Sam thinks Maupay. And interestingly, in terms of who would be the priority for game week 1, this is interesting. 13 for Ryan, which I think suggests that in our Twitter bubble community that probably half of us are starting with Matt Ryan. Even more so now we know that Christian Walton is a 4.0 backup goalkeeper now.
Correct.
6 went for Maupay as their game week 1 priority. 2 went for Trossard. Sam said his priority would be Lamptey, who only had the 1 vote. Lamptey, he thinks, will start the season. There is rotation risk with him. I think personally, if you don't want Ryan and you want a defensive Brighton, I think I'd lean into Ben White. I think he's going to get in that team. I think he's too good not to be playing in that team. That's probably where I'd lean.
I saw Brad Lewington, who's one of our patrons, jumping in on the Slack talking about Brighton at the weekend, saying that they were passing the ball around very well, and he was impressed with Ben White's passing more than anything else. Shout out Brad. So I think you're right there, James. That what's Ben White, 5 or is he 4.5?
4.5.
So that's a decent price. Lamptey's 4.5. If Lamptey was 4, I think Lamptey would be more attractive. At 4.5, I would rather go to Charlie Taylor or what have you. And I understand Charlie Taylor's not playing in game week 1, but I'm not going to be mucking around with my 4.5 million defender. So I think you've got something there with Ben White. Maybe potentially even from a Sky Fantasy Football point of view, if he's passing the ball around and picking up the passing points there. But interesting to see. I think Trossard will be their top point scorer this year. I think he'll have a breakthrough season.
Capable. Yeah, he strikes me as one who really could have the opposite of second season syndrome. He's now got the adaptation. Yes, I've got a very close eye on him, actually. Not a consideration from the start for myself. I've got a very close eye on him. What do you know about Christian Walton?
Nothing. Other than I don't see what difference it makes with a 4.5. We had a 4.5, 4 million rotation anyway with Ryan because Button was 4 million. So why Walton coming in at 4 million makes it any more or less attractive for people? I don't know.
I didn't really understand because obviously Button's gone to West Brom. I didn't understand the kind of thinking last week where people are, I'm not having Ryan now. So Ryan will play 38 games if he's fit anyway, and that situation hasn't changed. But this keeper, interestingly, is an upgrade on Button. Now, in my opinion, this is now a better partnership than Ryan and Button because this keeper's better than Button. Played 46 games for Blackburn Rovers in the Championship last year. They finished 11th. Interesting, if you want to check out the Wikipedia page on him, he said he helped the Riversiders, which I always thought was Middlesbrough personally, to finish 11th. He's injured at the moment. He is not likely to be available, Walton, until around about the international break. So there is that might put you off at the start. But yeah, I think he's going to be my backup keeper now. Point is, he's probably going to put more of a challenge on Ryan than what Button did. You shouldn't fear on Ryan. But this keeper's better, you know.
Good.
He's got solid consistency at the Championship level. And I know Button did as well. But Button's obviously a career I followed very closely because he was at Tottenham as a kid. He's never stood out he's a decent goalkeeper, but he's nothing that. Doing a bit of research last night on Walton, actually, he's probably going to put a bit of pressure on Ryan. Not to the extent of taking his shirt, but a bit of pressure. 16th, Suj.
Newcastle United.
20 people think Newcastle will finish in the bottom 6. A further 3 think relegated. FPL Football has gone for 14th, which I think is a reasonable prediction. They range between 12th and bottom in the predictions. 18 think Alan St. Maximin is going to step up and be Newcastle's talisman this year. 5 have gone Dubravka to be their top point scorer. 18 also said St. Maximin would be their priority to start with, 1 for game week 1. 2 said Dubravka. 2 said for Matt Ritchie. Matt Ritchie now with, at the time of recording, we're hearing strong rumours that Ryan Fraser and Callum Wilson are both signing for Newcastle.
Yeah, I think Sky
takes Ritchie away as an option, I think. Ritchie might even go the other way because he was at Bournemouth originally.
Interesting. So I was having lunch with my brother yesterday. We were around at my mum's house talking about football as you do. And his point of view on Newcastle, I said, look, Newcastle will be dangerous. That front 5, 6, if they get Wilson and Fraser with St. Maximin, Almiron, and so on, it's got some goals in it. With Dwight Gale when he comes back as well, I reckon we'll get back into the team, or at least provide a competition for Callum Wilson. He said, look, they're picking up players like Fraser and Wilson who were in a Bournemouth team that got relegated. They can't be that good. I don't know if I buy into that mindset of players were with a relegated team, so they're not really good enough to be in the Premier League. I think Callum Wilson can and will score goals, put the ball in front of him. 2 seasons ago, Ryan Fraser did particularly well. If Ryan Fraser comes in to Newcastle, I think it'd be very difficult for FPL to price him higher than St. Maximin as their talisman at Newcastle at 5.5 million. So I think he would be at 5.5 million as well. Based on his stats from 2 years ago, Ryan Fraser at 5.5 million with Callum Wilson up top.
What was Fraser last year? Did he start at 7 or 7.5?
Yeah, a lot.
He ain't going to start at 5.5, mate. He will be more than St. Maximin. No, he will be more. Yeah. Almiron's more than St. Maximin, right?
True, 6 million then. That's a ceiling. I think that 6 million is going to be a ceiling for him.
Minimum. I wouldn't be surprised if Fraser's 6.5, mate.
Wow.
It's the capability of the year before. He had a great relationship with Wilson. It depends where you sit, right? You can look at it and go, yeah, the two of them got relegated last year. I mean, Fraser completely down tools. Wilson had a bad season. But the year before, they were the highest combination for goals in 18-19. So It depends. What's your view on it? My view would be it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, and it will be better for them. But yes, these were two players who didn't really show up last season. I think it makes Newcastle a far more attractive proposition from an offensive sense. It will only help St. Maximin that someone might actually be on the end of some of these chances and stuff. I think having better quality forwards will give him more space. That's really important. You won't find that on a stat metric. If they get those two players in, I wouldn't have any concerns of them getting relegated, actually. Because I just think naturally they're okay defensively in terms of
they've got stability.
Individually.
They could have Shelby and
okay.
One of the long starts in the middle or whoever else they want to choose to plonk in there. Interesting. Where are we down to? 17th now, right?
Yeah. Now this is where people start getting pissed off with their fellow correspondents.
It's Aston Villa for me.
17th.
No, sorry. Yeah, it's Aston Villa for me.
17th, Crystal Palace.
Okay. Can I just be 18th is going to be Villa then, right?
18th Villa.
Yes. Okay, so it's very tight
19th here. West Brom, 20 Fulham. We'll come on to we'll do all four, I think, together.
I think I mean Villa here's the thing. I don't think Palace have done enough with just the signing of Eze to get them out of it. I think they need more reinforcements than that to get out of this. Whereas Villa, I think, because I feel like they've got a younger squad and more energy, Grealish still being there as their talisman, I think Villa will end up doing better. And they were very good post-lockdown, especially defensively as well. They solidified a lot more. Admittedly, Palace had sod all to play for, but I think Villa were better, and I think Villa are going to be 17.
12 think Palace will finish in the bottom 6. A further 9 think relegated. Miggs gone for 14th. Their range is 11th to 20th. 11 think Zaha will still be their top FPL point scorer. 5 each for Ayew and Eze. 3 have gone for Gator. Mig has gone for Ayew, interestingly. In terms of the game week 1 priority, it flips a little bit. 8 would prefer to go for Eze. 6 for Mitchell. 5 for Ayew. 4 for Zaha. 2 for Ferguson. Eze would be Mig's preference. On Ferguson, I asked all the guys who they thought would be the highest scoring 4.0 defender over the course of the whole season. Ferguson had the highest votes with 9. What we suggested here, again with Mig on the Correspondent Week podcast we recorded, was Mitchell is the one to start with, in the sense that he will start, but Van Aanholt is back in training. It's not going to last long. Ferguson is probably unavailable for game week 1, but has a good shot of taking Joel Ward's shirt when he is fit. I think, and we'll come on to this when I run through the list a bit more, but I'm going without them. Any of these 4.0 guys. I think they're all shit. In fact, no, fuck it. Let's do it now. I think they're all shit. And I think we've got a short-term memory bias on the amazing things that Lundstrom did last year and Wan-Bissaka the year before as well. And I think we got dirt fucking lucky. And you look at those last 2 years and you think, I've got to have one. I need to have the one that's going to break out. I don't think any of them are, is my point. And when one does, and I see that Johnson's playing every week, and I still think he would probably be the one I favoured, by the way, then fine, we'll have a look at it. Douglas ownership is laughable. Bernardo, I don't think is going to play for Brighton. They're really the 5 guys. I saw someone on Twitter asking last night about Burr at Wolves. It's like a desperation to have one of them, and I don't think any of them are going to be any good. The one that's most likely to play in game week 1, as it stands now, is Mitchell of Crystal Palace.
I'm going to have a 4.0 defender, but for me that's like the 3rd spot on the bench, and I don't really care about it. I'd rather have a 4 million defender, and that allows me to turn a 4.5 million midfielder into a £5 million midfielder, Tobias, Souček, whoever it may be, and that way round, rather than have 2 4.5s and have that, especially in the early weeks. One of the things we didn't talk about at the start of the show is with adopting the strategy that I'm going to do, which is no big heavy hitter in the beginning and then wait 2 or 3 weeks before I pile into one. I'm also not afraid to pull out my wild card early, game week 3 or 4. I think I put myself at ease and peace. That if I have to pull it out after 3 or 4 weeks, I have to pull it out after 3 or 4 weeks. What's the issue there?
I don't doubt that you will.
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a reputation for just pulling it out, James. So
right, okay.
lowering the tone as you do. Let's go down the table further. 18th. What do the correspondents think?
Villa in 18th, 11 think bottom 6, further 12 think relegated. So
Hopcroft, Adam.
It's only 3 that
Eden.
think they'll finish outside the bottom 6. Adam does think they'll still finish in the bottom 6. Adam Hopcroft went for 15th.
Okay.
Unsurprisingly, everybody thinks that Grealish will be their top FPL point scorer.
Yeah, that's a given.
Interestingly, 12 still think he would be the most likely player that they would start with for game week 1, which suggests to me that people are just bypassing Villa. Like, if I had to pick one, then it'd be Grealish. 7 have gone for Nyland, which would be a more sensible, probable choice as the 4.0 goalkeeper. 2 have said Keenan Davis, who we think might go out on loan if they get someone in. Nyland would be the only one to start with because of that. I'm sitting there as a 4.0 keeper, and if you want to play him in game week 2, that's likely to be an option. Tom Heaton is closing in on fitness, but we think Nyland will start the season, and it might be enough to nick out the value on it further down the line that you end up selling him at 4.2 or something. It's possible. But they're a watch and wait for me. Interested to see what Grealish's role will be at the start of the season, and if it changes at all. If you want to hear Adam's thoughts on that, we had quite a deep conversation about Grealish and how we think he should play and where Villa would get the best out of him, which would probably be in a deeper role, which makes him less of an FPL potential asset. The other one maybe to mention on Villa is, if you didn't hear it, is that Adam would prefer Konsa as the best 4.5 billion defender. So if you want to start with one of them rather than a Charlie Taylor or something on your bench, then his recommendation would be Konsa. I would personally still prefer Target, actually, but I bow to Adam's knowledge on that.
Do you think there's any value in John McGinn anymore this season? He's 5.5 million, which puts him
we
in the
didn't
same
even
bracket.
mention his name on that podcast,
Yeah, I know. He's gone up a little bit in price, and he still played over 2,000 minutes, 3 goals, 3 assists last season. When you've got Armstrong, St. Maximin, Ian Garner, all at 5.5 million as well, I feel like McGinn is down the pecking order a little bit. But had he not had that injury and had he carried on his momentum, maybe he could have broken through. I still think he's a very solid box-to-box midfielder.
He's never going to be one that's off my radar, put it that way. He's always going to be someone I'm keeping half an eye on, because he loves a shot, loves to break into the box. He's everything that should be good about a good, exactly everything that should be good about a good FPL asset, bar the silly tackle.
You'd say that he's locked in as well into that starting 11.
Oh, he's definitely a starter. Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about rotation necessarily with him as well.
19th, West Brom. 22 of the guys think relegated. 4 of them stay up. Or I should say 5, because Gemma and Harrison have gone for 17th. Nobody thinks they'll finish higher than 16th, but a positive here that 4 think they'll stay up. Interestingly, so listening back to last year's, there was quite a split in terms of who people thought would get relegated. 2 years earlier, nearly everybody voted for Cardiff and Huddersfield to get relegated, and they did. And this year's gone like that way as well, where the majority of people just cannot see West Brom or Fulham staying up. 17 have gone Pereira, unsurprisingly, to be the top West Brom FPL point scorer. 5 have gone for Johnston. And in terms of game week 1 priority, those numbers are very, very similar. 15 would prefer to go for Pereira, 5 again for Johnston. They're the 2 worth mentioning. Now, a lot of these predictions came in before Ian Garner signing was obviously confirmed.
Yep.
I would prefer to pay the extra for Pereira. Gemma agrees, pay the extra for Pereira. But Ian Garner at 5.5 million is really worth a watch. I discussed on the podcast with the guys that I quite like their fixtures. But if you break it down into a smaller chunk, it doesn't look so clever on the first 3 or 4 games. So I think I'm going to go without. If I had to start with one, and I have considered it, as in a million upgrade if Souček is out, I think if I buy someone at the 6 million value, it will be Pereira. I think I'd go for it.
I'm with you on that as well.
I think you'll be worth the little bit extra.
I'd like the player that breaks out and the one that I buy to be Grady. I'd like him to come through and be put in through the assists and scoring the goals. But the step up from Championship to Premier League, I need to see it first with the consistency and how they set up. And it also depends who they buy to fill in up front. because I can't see Austin and Robson-Kanu being prolific in the Premier League.
No.
I fear for West Brom. I would have had them
So do
20th, if I'm honest with you. I think Fulham, Scott Parker will be able to set them up defensively a little bit better with the resources that he has.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I've seen Slav. I love him. They'll never say a bad word about Slav, but
I love him, but I think he can't coach a team to defend. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not the personnel he's got there, and I think Harrison Reed coming into Fulham gives them that stability. I think Dara was saying that he's a defensive midfielder that broke up all the play and gave them that base, and they've got him back, and that's what they needed. So I think I trust Fulham a little bit more defensively. Both will struggle for goals potentially. Pereira definitely is the one to go to. I'd like it to be Grady, but let's see what happens. And last but not least, then Fulham, eh?
Only one of the correspondents doesn't think they'll get relegated, and that is Dara at the Tinkerman, who's predicted 17th. I would not expect any of the guys to predict their own club, particularly to get relegated.
Yeah, of course.
24 predicted Mitrovic to be the top FPL point scorer.
No surprise.
In terms of buying one for game week 1, if they had to, everybody said Mitrovic. Interestingly, 8 of the correspondents voted Harrison Reed. It's Harrison Reed, isn't it?
I think it's Harrison Reed.
Fucking mind blank there.
Yeah, I just said Harrison Reed a second ago. So if you didn't correct me then, we're both screwed.
or you said it and now it's in my head and I've got Harrison in my head. 8 of the correspondents voted Reed as the likely high-scoring 4.5 million midfielder.
Yep. He's in my squad at the moment.
Mitrovic, I think it's fine. If that's the 4.5 million midfielder anyone wants, I think that's fine. If somebody said pick one, I'd probably say him as well because it's just a little bit more locked on minutes than Bissouma at Brighton. The other thing to obviously bear in mind with Reed though is yes, Anguissa's still there. He could be sold. And obviously when we spoke with Dara about Reed potentially coming in at length, we didn't know Lamina was going to come with. Lamina's a player I've spoke about before. I really like. I like him as a footballer. I think it's something on the outside has gone very badly wrong at Southampton. And I think he has games where he looks like he can't be bothered. If he can be bothered, he's a very good footballer, by the way. So I think Fulham are a lot stronger in that area. Yes, I would probably favour Reed, but actually I wouldn't rule out Lamina as an option now because as the new sign, it's probably likely to play most of the games. However, he obviously hasn't played for Southampton for a very long time, so I don't know what sort of fitness state he'll be in. Mitrovic, for me now, is dependent on other factors, whether I start with him or not. Just to cover off some of the other predictions that I asked of the guys.
Golden Boot and what have you. Yeah.
Golden Boot. 9 of the guys have gone for Aubameyang, 6 for Harry Kane, 5 for Werner, 3 for Mohamed Salah.
Martial doesn't even get a look in there, eh?
No, I've only included guys in these that had more than one vote.
I think for me, Werner, Martial and Kane, this is going to be an interesting season, James, for Golden Boot. I think it's going to be a lot tighter and there's going to be a lot more players in it. 3 for
Salah is more the headline there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's crazy, yeah.
And obviously
been there or thereabouts, 18 to 20 goals plus 30 the other year. He's solid.
In terms of top scoring midfielder, we're all going Aubameyang, which is interesting when we get onto top FPL points overall. So 10 think De Bruyne again, 6 think Salah, 4 Sterling, 3 Aubameyang, and 2 Bruno Fernandes.
He's going to get the Golden Boot without being the top point scorer.
Well, I don't know. It's interesting how it flips. Admittedly, a lot of those who voted Aubameyang Golden Boot might have just given their vote to De Bruyne, right, as top FPL point scorer. So we have to factor that in.
Yeah, and the assist count, like De Bruyne will double Salah and Aubameyang's assist count more than likely. If they pick up 8 or 9 assists, he's going to go double. So you think about that, that's an additional 9-10 goals over a season from a points point of view. So I agree with that. I think De Bruyne is going to have a beastly season. I need to get him into my team as soon as possible, really.
Game week 3 for me. Best 4.5 million defender, and this is judged on actually just get that one. Top goalkeeper, most points for the whole season. Who do you think they voted for?
Nick Pope.
It was 9 went for Nick Pope, 6 went for Alisson, 2 went for Ederson, Lloris, and Ramsdale.
I think Alisson, mate.
I agree with that, actually. I think
Alisson
Alisson as well.
He's not going to pick up the bonus, but trust me, Liverpool are going to be keeping clean sheets this season. I think they're going to be drilled and ready. 2 seasons ago, 21 clean sheets. When he played the full season, he picked up 176 points in total. And that includes a grand total of a massive 9 bonus points over the season, which is sod all. Pope, on the other hand, last season, 170 points, which is 6 points less and includes 23 bonus points. So there's going to be a middle ground there. Burnley will probably keep 2 or 3 clean sheets less. Liverpool will keep, or Alisson himself will keep 2 or 3 clean sheets more. I think Alisson is going to pip it.
Best 4.5 million defender, Charlie Taylor. Had
No doubt.
13 of the votes, no surprise there. 4 for Kyle Walker-Peters, 2 each for Luke Ayling and Ruben Vinagre, who essentially they're the 4.5 million defenders I'd be considering, but I'm now crossing Vinagre off that list. Best 4.0 defender, and this is judged on which would score the most points during the whole season. 9 went for Ferguson, 6 for Mitchell, 5 for Johnson, 3 for Barry Douglas, 2 for Bernardo of Brighton. I don't want to start with any of them because I know I'm going to get that decision wrong. If one of them does prove to be a decent asset, I can comfortably drop down to that comfortable asset. That's my view on it. Put it this way, none of these are going to be doing fucking Lundstrom bits in the first few game weeks.
No. Agreed.
So I don't think it's a priority. I completely agree with the standpoint of, yeah, of course, 4.0 defender sits third on the bench every week. Why spend the extra? Yeah, I completely get that. My decision is at the moment that I don't want to start with any player that's not going to be involved. So that's ruling out the people that I've got question marks over, like these guys, like the 4.5 million forwards. I want to start, because of part of the game week 1 issues and manoeuvring, I want to start with 15 players I know are going to be on a football pitch.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, genuinely, it wouldn't surprise me if none of those 4.0 defenders start game week 1. I think that's possible. As we discussed with Mig, Hodgson might go, fuck it, I'm playing Reeder Virold at left back. Now from the friendlies and the information, that doesn't appear to be the case, but I also would not be surprised.
Who's Reeder Virold? Is he like Riederwald and Toby Alderweireld smashed into one?
Yeah, that guy. Nobody knows how to pronounce his name.
Riederwald. Well, to be fair, I struggled with Alderweireld for so long.
He wishes. Yeah, exactly. What are you talking about? He wishes he could play as like fucking Alderweireld, Riederwald, whatever.
Riederwald. Yeah.
Right, listen, that's the next Doherty, isn't it? Yeah, if I can pronounce. Tell me how to pronounce the Palace guy's name. I don't know that one. Best 4.5 million midfielder. 8 went for Reed. 7 went for Bazuma. 4 went for Dale Stephens. 2 went for Gordon, which we think is probably off the table now. I would potentially add Lamina into that conversation, but I think the answer, one way or the other, in terms of best and safest 4.5 million midfielder, one way or the other, the answer lies at Brighton or Fulham, I think.
The interesting thing with both the last 2 questions, the 4 million defender and the 4.5 million midfielder, James, is that it's down to appearance points more than it is attacking returns or defensive returns. So really the question is who's going to play the most minutes. I think inevitably whoever plays the most minutes end up being the highest points.
Probably, yeah. Simple as that. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 38 times 2 is 76. Your highest scoring 4.5 million midfielder is probably going to be sort of in the 80s.
80s, yeah.
A couple of little returns, minus a couple of bookings, minus the odd clean sheet bonus. Yeah, probably. It's no big deal. Highest scoring midfielder between 7 and 9 million. 10 went for Pulisic. 6 went for Son. 4 went for Mahrez. 3 went for Greenwood. 2 for Willian. Interesting, considering Pulisic is kind of out of sight, out of mind, that he was still the obvious one people went here. Obviously, again, remember, Havertz wouldn't have been in anybody's voting because he was signed afterwards. But yeah, I think you and I are both on, I want to get Pulisic as soon as I see he's fit, basically.
Yes. There's a name that has not been mentioned by anybody in that list, which is Mason Greenwood. He gets 3,400 minutes. He did get 3 votes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one that I'm very strongly keeping an eye on. If he starts the season and he's continuously playing as part of a front 3 there off the right, Mason Greenwood at 7.5 million could be even 15, 16 goals plus chuck in 10 clean sheets. He's going to be a very, very good asset, 7.5 million. How many votes did Sonny get?
6.
That's decent as well. I think he has the added advantage of both goals and assists. The thing with Son is that you want to see him given a bit more freedom to go and express himself rather than be trapped to the wing. Like you've mentioned it so many times that you feel like Mourinho pins him to the touchline. We don't want to see that with Son. There's a lot of love for Son in the community. I think a lot of people think his 9 million price tag is too low. And I'd probably agree by about 500,000. So if Son pops off, interesting one in that bracket to look at as well. Greenwood, Son, it's congested, right? It's why I almost feel like if you had a midfield that was Pulisic, just made up of those players, Pulisic, Greenwood, Son, Dele Alli doesn't even get a look in at the moment, but if he starts popping off like he did a few seasons ago, you could get away with not having a Salah, Mane, Aubameyang. I think I was going to go so far as to say KDB, but nah, you got to have him.
On Son, just to note, basically, in my opinion, and he's absolutely fine to start with if you want to. I'm not going to put anybody. Genuinely, if people want to go for Kane, Son, Davis, Dyer, Doherty, even Lloris, if you want to start with any of them, it's fine. I'm not going to put you off particularly. The interesting thing on Son to bear in mind is the impact that he can potentially have on him with what the right back's doing. So essentially, if we play with the advanced right back, it generally means Son has to hug the touchline a lot more. If we play with traditional fullbacks, he is given greater freedom to move. So in an odd way, Doherty looking at a better investment for FPL makes Son less. And Doherty being less makes Son more. Does that make sense?
It does indeed.
It's about the balance of lines in the team structure, basically. And Spurs playing with a more traditional right back who plays same positionally as the left back is the best news you would have for Heung-min Son. I don't know how we're going to start from that perspective. I generally think it will change from game to game. Best midfielder, overall points under 7 million. 6 went for Foden. Then there's quite a bit of a split. 3 went for Armstrong. 3 for Grealish. 3 for St. Maximin. 3 for Adama Traore. 2 for Diogo Jota. And best forward under 8 million. 10 of the guys, as I said earlier, went for Calvert-Lewin. 6 went for Chris Wood. 5 went for Maupay.
Antonio?
Only 1 vote for Antonio. Only 1 vote for Mitrovic. 1 vote for a couple of others.
I think Mitrovic has consistency. I think Chris Wood is the one that's going to break out.
I think could be as well. I'm surprised Antonio only had the 1 vote. Yeah. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. That's what they're there for.
I don't know what the wife who's got a fucking day off work's doing, but there you go.
So, is that all the predictions?
Harry, shut up. He's probably crying because he can hear his fucking dad. That is all the predictions covered, yes.
It's an interesting rundown. I mean, I know some of the clubs that we're going to completely ignore and sideswipe, but there's always one player from every club that is interesting. So much of the feedback on Correspondent Week was that I tinkered with my team after every single one, and I wanted a player from all of these squads and what have you. So going to be interesting to see who emerges from them. I think that this season, more than any other, we are better informed about the squads and the players and the tactics and the positions. A lot of people have been talking about an overload of noise in the community, excessive numbers of pods. We should probably apologize for that.
Sorry
because,
about that, guys. Yeah, sorry.
We were a bit extreme last week. But at the same time, I think over the weekend, people have armed themselves with so much knowledge about the lesser value players. It's going to be very interesting this season. The start's going to be very interesting. The first 4 weeks for me are all about keeping pace and not falling away. I think it was around game week 8 or 9 last season that I dropped to 2 million, 2 point something, and recovered to 100,000, 136K. So overall rank and all that stuff, I'm just not going to worry about it. It's like looking at the Premier League table after the first 3 or 4 games. It doesn't really mean that much. That's why I'm going to see the first 3 or 4 game weeks as well. If I end up with a horror game week, 25, 30 points because of the strategy, I'd rather it happen now than it happens in game week 36 or 37. So be it.
Was there a correspondent who particularly influenced you in any of your decision making so far?
Do you know what? That's a very good question. I'm just looking at my squad to see who I bought in and out to muck around.
Okay, while you think about it, I'll answer it. No.
No is the answer for me as well.
Although Andy Martin kind of gave me the nudge of the answer that I was looking for between Ayling and Dallas. And Gemma and Harrison Friday night really made me want to have Mateus Pereira in my squad. But other than that, no. I didn't learn anything. There was a few that would have put me off certain players more, but there weren't players that I felt more interested in afterwards. I guess the one that's dangerous to listen to will probably be Ted at Rotation FPL in terms of Werner and stuff. If you haven't got Werner, probably skip that pod.
Yeah, because he'll make you buy
probably
him.
The dangerous one.
I'll tell you who it was. If I had to pick one, it would be Dara, the Tinkerman. Off the back of it, Harrison Reed had become my 4.5 million midfielder, taking that advice. And doubling down on his article about Marek Rodak, there's just something in the back of my mind that makes me feel that if Dara's backing him that much, and Dara strongly believes that he's a really good 4.5 keeper, he's bugging me. He's sitting on my shoulder, Marek Rodak, saying, pick me, pick me, pick me, all because of what Dara said. Tierney has made his way into my squad off the back of a little bit of what Adam said, but I just think Tierney was there or thereabouts anyway because of his post-lockdown performances. And Grady, Friday night was a little bit of a Grady loving, but I didn't expect the response from the West Ham players off the back of it. Now you do then see these like little clip reels of him doing back heels and putting assists through and making him look like Messi. Of all
these things anyway, mate.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's a super little talent.
Tricks and flicks don't always translate, right? I mean, you're coming up against some very, very good defenses. But at the time when we spoke about it and we recorded on the Thursday, I was very practical. It was very much head over heart. Let the guy go and play football. 18 to 20 million is not a bad price to get for him. But then the heart comes in and you see the emotional reaction from the players and you see all of that stuff and you think, actually, you know what? It's not always just about the practicality of it. Sometimes there's an emotional impact that transfers have, and it's been bigger. So that was a little bit of another influence. That Grady loving made me feel that he could be a good FPL asset, but also that selling him was the wrong decision, even if he had ended up staying on our bench.
Nothing further to add on that, other than we obviously thank the correspondents for their brilliant work last week. Remember, guys, they do it all out of the goodness of their hearts and for a little bit of love, right? And because, frankly, they've all got egos and enjoy speaking about their teams. So, listen, they were phenomenal last week. All the insight they gave people. I feel they are so underutilized in the community in terms of, if it was me, I mean, I'd slide in their DMs personally. I'm not saying you should do that. But if I want to know something on X team, I'm just going to @ the correspondent. That's genuinely what I would do all the time. @ Mig, what do you think of Ferguson Mitchell? @ Spirit Blues, what do you think of Richarlison versus Calvert-Lewin? Whatever it was, I would just @ them if I wanted to know. I wouldn't come asking me. The only thing you should be asking me for is, who's your correspondent? And if you want to go to the list on my Twitter page, then you can find the correspondence easily there. You can follow the whole list of correspondence as well.
Follow the list. It follows everybody automatically, which is perfect.
So,
and while you mention him, we should give a little shout out to Sean at Spirit Blues, our Everton correspondent, who unfortunately at the moment is down with the COVID. So you and your family, mate, we really hope you all get well, speedy recovery, chin up, and hopefully Everton will be cheering you up at the weekend. But big shout out, because it's a horrible time for everybody. And we do want everybody to stay safe, especially
Listen, I'm going to be honest. I wish Sean all the best. I hope this time next week he's fucking depressed because his team's been spanked by Spurs. I'm not going to apologise for that. Now, good luck, Sean. Stay well, mate. Stay safe. Be strong, pal.
To all the listeners, thank you for joining us again this week. We've got a full lineup of content culminating on Friday with another full podcast where we should be 99% locked in with our draft. So do stay tuned for all of that. We've got a clash of the correspondents this week with a championship twist. We've got Norwich playing Huddersfield, James. You've brought back a few We were two correspondents in Mark and Mark to talk about that.
That's
so
not
if you're
going to be confusing, is it?
if you're interested in the Championship football and just want to, both of them are very good FPL players as well. So I'm sure we'll touch on their FPL teams going into game week 1 as well. As well as the Sky Fantasy Football rundown on Wednesday, where we'll be going into a lot more detail on that. We should have finalised drafts for that as well, and a people's poll tomorrow. So stay tuned.
Is live now till 8:00 this evening. There are 3 options available. You can either pick our current drafts and the reasoning behind them, new signings into the Premier League this season and our expectations of them, or captaincy and how far ahead should we look.
I think number 2 is going to win, James. Just putting it out there.
I think number 1 is going to win.
Interesting. So there we go. As always, if you need even more fantasy football content, we also have a Patreon that you can subscribe to, patreon.com/planetfpl. We produce additional podcasts on a daily basis, looking at a Q&A. We also have Sky Extra Time, Tottenham, which is a show specifically around Tottenham and West Ham. We chuck a bit of fun into the mix with a quiz every week as well. And James will jump on the live stream on Friday. Is it live stream Friday?
Live stream Friday, obviously differential show for patrons Friday as well. Exactly. I will. It depends what happens with COVID during the season, but I will do my deadline streams as well. So I will be on YouTube 10 a.m. Saturday morning as well.
There we go. So if you're interested in additional FPL content, as well as joining our Slack channel, so much good banter and chat in there as well. Correspondents are all in our Slack channel as well. Then just go and find out what you want to do with that. Other than that, stay subscribed wherever you are, whether it's YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud. But most importantly, guys, stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. Ciao for now.
Start being bloody nice to each other again. Cue music, please, man child.
Nice to each other. What's that? Shut up, James.